Hey everyone, and welcome to Introduction to Formal Logic at USC Aiken Fall 2020 and to the online version of this course. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go over the syllabus, I'm going to go over the parameters of the course, and I'm going to also demonstrate to you where you can find things in Blackboard. Alright, let's start by actually taking a look at the syllabus and the stuff that's on here. So, first of all, this is Introduction to Formal Logic. Fall 2020, this is an online version of the course. I will have, as you can see here, office hours that will be held. I'm usually going to set aside Tuesdays, 10 a.m., where you could meet with me on Zoom, and also by appointment. So I'm available at other times during the week. But I'm basically going to set 10 a.m. aside. Now, since Zoom works in a way where I can only do about like 40-minute increments at a time, at least the version that I have, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that time aside, and if you want to meet with me on Tuesday, I should be good to go there at 10 a.m. But if another time works well for you, let me know too, because I want to be really, really open and available to you for a course like this for logic. And all my contact information is there on the right. Now that phone number is my office phone number. Probably not going to be in my office very often, so email is really the best way to reach out to me. So what's this course about? Logic, sure. What's formal logic exactly? Well, I'm going to start by saying this. Many of you, if not most of you, are probably taking this class to avoid taking a math class. And if that's the case, that's perfectly normal. All right, that's probably the main reason why people take logic. In fact, that's why I took this class years ago. I want to say it was probably 2003 when I myself was a student at USC Aiken a long time ago. That's originally why I took logic, was to get out of having to take a math class. What I've discovered over the years, and I wanted to avoid taking a math class because I didn't think I was particularly very good at math. And what I learned later is that was because I actually had terrible math teachers in high school. Really, I'll say that unabashedly, and that I wasn't taught math very well. And in fact, one of the things that I think would have helped when it comes to understanding mathematical principles and application is having had this class first. So I think a rudimentary form of this class, like formal logic, this is something we should teach to children. Like late elementary school, middle school, at least the real basics of this. This is something we should do early on. I think it would make us all better at math. I think it would actually make us better at language, and really make us better critical thinkers. Really, all around would be more helpful. I don't understand why we don't do it. So knowing that, what's it going to look like? So what this class is, this is an introduction to formal logic. This is not advanced formal logic. So that's going to include an investigation as to the nature of arguments, fallacies, and the criteria and techniques of determining validity and soundness for deductive arguments. Now, I probably said about 3 or 4 words there that you have no idea what they mean, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, you're going to learn them by the end. In fact, in this next aspect, when it comes to learning outcomes of the course, which can be found on the syllabus's first page, most of these terms I don't expect you to know now, but to be able to at least recognize by the end of the semester. Not to be able to define them magisterially, but to be able to recognize and have a basic idea of what they mean. That includes arguments, formal fallacies, informal fallacies, laws of logic, validity, soundness, strength, induction, deduction, abduction, propositional logic, predicate logic, modal logic, syllogistic logic, rules of inference, rules of substitution, truth tables, truth trees, formal proofs, conditional proofs, and indirect proofs. That seems like a lot right now. We got the whole semester to work on that. Okay? So you're going to know some terms by the end, including those there. Some of those terms are more important than others. You're going to work on translating deductive arguments into formal propositional language. I'll explain what that looks like here in a moment. You're going to determine the validity of deductive arguments by rules of inference, rules of substitution, proofs, truth trees, and truth tables, and we'll go into what that looks like. You're going to apply those laws of logic and rules of inference and substitution into your own reasoning, the work that you do, and I want you to be able to identify types of arguments, means of inference, and extant fallacies in popular discourse. So, with that being said, let me do a preview of what that's going to look like. So what does formal logic look like? So I'm going to move away from the syllabus here for a moment and take a look at what formal logic looks like. Okay, by formal logic, what is meant is putting things formally. Now, sometimes formally can mean like in an official way, like yes, professor, yes, sir, yes, madam, and so on and so forth. By formally here, I mean like kind of like a formula. So, there are all kinds of formula. I'm sure you've seen before, here's a formula. All right. There you go. Okay, law of conservation. Stuff like maybe you remember, oh, gravity is the mass of one object plus the mass of another object by the distance between them squared. That's what gravity is. Okay, maybe you've seen that one. But even simple stuff that you learned early on. This right here, 1 plus 1 equals 2. That's a formula. So all these are formula here. Formulae. Now, some people say formulas for the plural, some people say formulae. English is weird, so take your pick there. Okay, now, these are all formulae, and what that means is each of these elements here, these letters and things, represents some notion or concept. Okay, like c here equals mc squared is the speed of light. Okay, or this 1 here, this one's fairly obvious. The symbol 1 represents the notion or concept 1. Okay, or this r squared here, that represents the notion of distance. Usually when the letters match up to something like G stands for gravity, that's helpful. But here's what I mean by formal logic. So here's what we're doing in logic. Okay, it's stuff like this. We'll take formulae like this. In fact, let me go ahead and refresh this and have a new batch up here so I can show you what it's going to look like in this class, because this is basically what I have up here, basically physics, and arithmetic. Let's take a look at something more plain. So formal logic allows us to represent things, really anything that we can say. So for example, if I said something like, today is the first day of class. Okay? Now if I told you, so this is a sentence in English, it makes sense. It has subject, verb, predicate, all that good stuff, and some other things going on. Now here's what's often going to happen in formal logic. This is really how it's going to work really all semester long. This is a simple statement. And what I'm going to say here is I'm going to say, okay, the word that I underline, that word that I underline, let's take the first letter of that underlined word to represent the whole statement. So today is the first day of class. So I said take the first letter of that underlined word to represent the entire statement. So I'm going to write up here D. What does D stand for? It stands for not the word day, it stands for the whole statement. Okay. Today is the first day of class. Okay. Now what if I said this? That's one sentence, and that one equals D. Let's take a look at another sentence that I'm going to put underneath it. We should read the syllabus. All right, and just like with that first one there, I'm going to pick a random word. Let's go with this one. Okay. I happen to both pick nouns here, but it's completely arbitrary. Let's say I'm going to take for this statement, and this is a separate one here. I'm going to say the first letter of this underlined word is going to stand for this statement. So what does S mean? If I would write S here, it just means, hey, this means we should read the syllabus, right, in this context. So S stands for we should read the syllabus. Okay, great. Now, what if I said this now? So far we've had things represent statements. What I also want to show is how these statements can be related to each other through various kinds of connections that we have in English. So sometimes you probably learn these as conjunctions, although they're technically in like a grammatical sense, they're conjunctions. In logic, conjunction is going to mean something very specific. So these are ways we can join sentences. Like I could use and, or if then. Okay, those are just a few. There's actually a couple more, but so we don't go too far into it, I'll just do this here. So like conditional statements are represented by if then. When we say if then in English, okay, if this thing happens, then this other thing happens. And statements, or statements. We actually have different kinds of ors, and I want to get into that later, so I'm not going to go into too much detail here. So let's just take these two, if then and and. Now in this class, the if then statement is going to be represented by an arrow. It's going to look like this. And whatever follows if goes on the left side of the arrow, and whatever follows the then goes on the right side, basically. So if that's true, what would it mean if I wrote this? I'm just going to call it F1 here. If I wrote D arrow S, based on the D that we have here and the S that we have here, What would this mean? Well, D stands for this. Today is the first day of class. S stands for we should read the syllabus. And the arrow stands for, it means that this is an if-then statement. And whatever follows if goes on the left side of the arrow, whatever follows then goes on the right side. So what does this say if I were to read it back into English? This says, if today is the first day of class, then we should read the syllabus. That's all this says. Okay? Let's take a look at another one. Same variables, and the fact that these letters can change and mean something different here. We're going to deal with different letters. These are variables. This on the other hand, is a connective. Something joining the variables together. So let's take a look at another one. In formal logic, and is going to be represented by me by a big dot like this. Okay? Some people use an ampersand, but I'm not going to even attempt to draw that. Okay, it's going to look like it'll look like I'm a child who's drawing with the wrong hand an 8, and it's just, I'm not even going to embarrass myself in that regard. Okay? So let's take a look at, actually this should be our second one here. Let's take a look at how we'd represent the same thing with an and. So let me put it this way. D dot S. What would this mean if I were to read this back in English? This says, today is the first day of class, and we should read the syllabus. These are two, I used the same, I plugged in the same letters, and I told you what they stood for, and that these symbols simply represent these concepts. In fact, on the last page of your syllabus, all the symbols that we could possibly use are available to you there. Like, there are no symbols that will come up in the course that are not already there on the last page of the syllabus. Here's what I mean. Here's every single possible symbol that I would use this semester. And actually, a lot of these I'm not going to. Like, these bottom 4 here, these aren't going to come up ever in this class. I want you to know they exist in case you Google something and you see a diamond and you go, I have no idea what that means. It's the same thing as saying, it's the logical way of saying, maybe, it could be, or that square down here, second to last. This is the logical way of saying, hey, it must be, okay? This backwards E, it exists, upside down A. For all you, it's the same thing as saying like for all, or like for all X, or something like that. We're not going to use those at all in here, okay? But all the other symbols here will probably come up at some point. These ones, not as important. These are the main ones we're going to use. And we actually just talked about 2. So that arrow I was just talking about, that represents if-then statements. The technical term for that is conditional statements. The dot here stands for and statements, and those are, the technical term, are conjunctions. There's other kinds of connectives here too. In the first couple of lectures, I'm going to get into that stuff, so I don't want to get too invested in that here. I simply want to say what this diagram represents. Okay, so all that stuff is here on the syllabus for you to look at, and really, there it is. That's everything in terms of symbols that you need to know for the totality of formal logic. Now, formal logic is not just what we just did. Okay, so what we did there a moment ago was we were doing some translating into formal logic. We took stuff that was in English and we put it into formal notation. We'll also be doing stuff with logic as well. Here's what I mean. So let's take the same variables I had a moment ago. Let's say I had this. Let's say I had, okay, today is the first day of class. We should read the syllabus. Those are the terms. Let's say I had, again, what I showed us a moment ago here, D arrow S. Now remember, the arrow means there's a conditional statement here. Whatever's on the left side of the arrow, that's the if part. Whatever's on the right side of the arrow, that's the then part. So what does this say? If we were to put it in English, if today is the first day of class, then we should read the syllabus. Let's say we had that. But let's say I also had, hey, today is the first day of class. And what do I know? And here's where we're doing logical deduction in this case. Okay, so this is, we've done the formal part already. Okay, these letters and symbols representing English terms and concepts. What do we know? If today is the first day of class, then we should read the syllabus. And today is the first day of class. What should we be doing? Reading the syllabus. And this symbol over here looks like a T on its side, means this is what you can get. In fact, this is a logical rule. It's called modus ponendo ponens, which says this: if you have an if-then statement, and you have the if part, the left side of that arrow by itself, you can get the right side of that arrow. So that's just a little taste of formal logic. Let's now get back to the syllabus and taking a look at the academic honesty policy. All right, next bit, the academic honesty policy. So this is in your student handbook. This is should be on all of your the syllabus you have for each class. I'm going to go over it here so it's generally stated. That it can not be argued that I didn't state this explicitly. Um, the student is to, let me get to the immediate imperative. The student is to avoid condescending into the quandary of needing to get good grades at any cost. So here's what the USCA handbook, student handbook, considers academic dishonesty: cheating, lying, bribery, and plagiarism. So these would include the following examples. I don't want to go over every single one of these in jot and tittle, but let's make sure it's fairly clear what's going on. Giving or receiving unauthorized assistance. Okay? Unauthorized use of materials or information of any type, or the unauthorized use of electronic or mechanical device in connection with the completion of any academic work. Now that second one is not really going to be a problem for this class because we're not meeting in person. We're not going to have quizzes in person. But giving or receiving unauthorized assistance, that would include, I got this quiz from 3 years ago or even last semester. It's not the same quiz. It's not going to be helpful to you. If you plug that stuff in, it's going to be very obvious. So don't do that. Do the work for this course yourself. 3, unauthorized use of any portable electronic device unless required for the course. That's not going to be a problem for this class. Access to the contents of any test or examination, or the purchase, sale, or theft. Don't buy old tests or quizzes. Don't sell them. Okay, and also you are forbidden to really even look at them. Okay, as an aid. So don't do that. Use of another person's work without proper acknowledgement of the source. Don't do that. Intentional misleading of any person in connection with any academic work. So don't pretend you're somebody that you're not in turning things in. Don't do anything misleading. That would include things like, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't get it in on time because my dog ate my laptop. Okay, or something like that. That's still considered academic dishonesty. Difficult to prove, but still considered academic dishonesty. Offering or giving any favor or thing of value for the purpose of influencing improperly a grade or other evaluation of a student in an academic program. Don't tempt me with offers, okay? If you give me an A, I'll give you $10,000. I'm sorry, we're at an ethical impasse. That would be a bribe. So don't bribe for grades. That's what that would mean there. Okay, just do the work. And then finally, conduct intended to interfere with an instructor's ability to evaluate accurately a student's competency or performance in an academic program. That could be anything where you're trying to subvert what I'm doing. So you got a hold of my grade book and you burned it. You log into USCA system and you change everybody's grade to a C+ or something like that. Just anything in that regard. Most of these aren't problems. Okay, usually the only problem that I come up with is people trying to pass off someone else's work as their own. That's usually not an issue in this class. Most of my logic students are good students and do the work themselves. Okay, if any of that happens, you're going to earn a 0. So avoid, please. So let's get into how this course is going to work now. So let's talk about the course parameters. All right, so there's a lot going on here because this is an online course, and I want to make sure it's as clear as possible. All right, so this is the online version of this course. Here's how it's going to work. There are 10 grades. That's it, 10 grades. Okay, in 2 waves. So there are 10 quizzes. Each item is worth 10% of your final grade. Each item. Okay? 2 of them are going to be quizzes that you do in Blackboard, kind of like multiple choice, fill in the blank, like in application, like they're Blackboard quizzes. Okay? And 8 of these are going to be documents that you basically download, print out. There might be a way to do it where you're doing it without having to print it out, but I think printing it out will probably be best. Okay? Or if you've got some kind of software where you're able to, write legibly on your computer, that would be a way to do it, and put these things into PDFs. That would be something that you could do. But I'll just say this: 8 of the quizzes, it's going to be PDFs that you're going to need to download, fill out like you would any other document, and then scan them and import them back to me on Blackboard. So I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like in a separate tutorial, precisely what the steps are there. But generally speaking, what you'll need to be able to do is, again, download a PDF, print it out, fill it out, scan it on your phone. You don't need anything more than a phone. You don't need a professional scanner or anything like that. Scan it, collate it. When I say collate it, what do I mean? Well, just like this syllabus that we're looking at right now is collated. It's 5 separate pages, but the 5 separate pages are together in one document. So what you'll need to do is, like, if you're scanning your quiz, let's say it's 10 pages, and you scan those 10 pictures into your phone. I need you to put them together into one document and turn it into a PDF and submit it in the appropriate Dropbox. Okay, so that's what you're going to need to do for 8 assignments. Okay, so 8 times throughout the semester. Okay. Okay, now how are you going to get to do these quizzes? Well, they're up on Blackboard. In fact, the first half of them, the first wave is already ready to go. All the first half of the semester is already prepared. You can kind of do it at your own pace. And I'll go ahead and say this. The first half of the semester, it says it right here, quizzes 1 through 5, all due October 7th, 2020. So you can start on this, and in fact, I would encourage you to start on it sooner rather than later. But basically, nothing is due, nothing at all, until October 7th. Now, I do encourage you to log into Blackboard, keep looking at things, reach out to me with questions. But nothing is due until October 7th. Okay, so I'm going to be recommending every now and then, like checking in, like, hey, get this stuff in. And I'm going to have a suggested time frame of when you should turn things in. But nothing is due. There are no late penalties of any kind until, I'll just say, everything, all the first half of everything, first 5 quizzes are due October 7th. And then the second wave, okay, quizzes 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are due December 2nd. Okay? So don't wait until those due dates to get everything in, but that's the day when everything is due by. So 2 due dates, first half of the semester, again, October 7th, second half of the semester, December 2nd. Okay? And I'll say that after the aforementioned due dates, no, I won't accept any late work. Obviously, if you have reasons for that to be the case. Okay, like, I couldn't turn it in because of this. Extenuating circumstances, of course I'll accept. Okay? But what I want to get at is that work, I need to grade it as soon as possible, especially in the second wave. Okay, the second wave, if it's not in by December 2nd, it's going to be very difficult for me to grade all that stuff in that short period of time and get your grades in on time. So it's imperative that you get the assignments in by the respective due dates. If something happens thereabouts, please let me know. Like, hey, I've got stuff going on. Please reach out to me. Okay, it's better to communicate with me earlier rather than later about missing deadlines. Okay, sometimes life happens, and I completely understand that. But I'm going to say the general goal should be get things in on time. Text for this class, it's this. Now, this is an old logic textbook. Now, when I say, well, not this particular copy. This particular copy even smells fresh. Okay? But this came out in the early 90s, so you notice a lot of the references in it are from the early 90s, and probably many of you were not around in the early 90s, or if you were tiny. Okay? There are better logic textbooks out there. Frankly, I don't particularly like this book, which is why most of what I'm doing is I'm using it kind of for the problems in it. But most of the instructional aspects of this course are going to be from the lectures, which are going to be on YouTube. I'll talk about those in a little bit. Okay? So I use it because it's cheap, relatively inexpensive. Okay, the logic book that if I could use my dream logic book for this course, that book is like $300. I'm not making. I think it would be unethical of me to ask students to pay $300 for a textbook. That's just my view. Okay, maybe there are other professors, other classes that do that. I don't know. I don't think it's right. Right. So, and I really don't care about its condition. The original version comes with a CD-ROM that's compatible with Windows 95. You don't need that. Okay? In fact, I'm not even sure it would work. And mine doesn't have the CD-ROM either, so don't worry about that. Okay? So again, here are those grading components and weights. 10 quizzes. There they are. Everything's equal. And some of them have bonus points. So some of the quizzes, especially the ones that you will download and do at home, sometimes they'll be worth 120 out of 100 points. Now, I know this is not a math class, but what that means is you'll have bonus points available. Sometimes it'll be 20, 30, maybe even 40 bonus points available on a quiz. So it's actually, and that gives you some room to make mistakes in. I think one of the other reasons that people get intimidated by math and sometimes science stuff that has formula in it, whether it be chemistry or physics, is because, you make a mistake or two and you end up messing up the whole thing. Okay, and you end up getting a terrible grade. So I think having sometimes 30 or 40 extra bonus points means that you can make some significant mistakes and then still have a pretty good grade. Like, you could screw up, like there, if you have 130 points out of 100, there you go. You can mess up, and you can mess up 40 points worth of material, okay, and still come out successfully in this kind of work. Okay. Now, if this were a class that were more about writing essays and developing ideas, I would think about the grading there very differently. But for this kind of work, where we're dealing with problems and the skills are new and we have to practice them to make them work, and also in this online environment where we can't have the same kind of dynamic where you can ask questions in class, and even if we were doing it synchronously on Zoom, I think that's a lot to ask of people too, all right, in my estimation. But since we're not in that kind of dynamic, I think giving you that bit of points to have some space to work in, I think should be helpful for you. So keep that in mind when I say that those 10 assignments. I don't want you to get anxious about, oh, that's it. If I screw up one of these assignments, I fail the class. Nope. There's there's room to make mistakes here. And my intention also, this is why the due dates are so important. The earlier you get an item in, the earlier I can grade it. And I can show you, here's what you did here. I can give you feedback so that you can get better. So if you make a mistake on quiz 2, I can show you what your mistake is. Okay, not to go shame on you that you messed this up, but to show you, hey, here's what you did here, here's what needs to happen. Okay? And furthermore, after quizzes are due, so after the stuff is due on October 7th, I'll release a series of answers to all those. Not that there's no final exam, there's no cumulative aspect in that regard, but just so you know, here's the feedback of here's what you should have done on these quizzes, so you know. Now, I will say, again, there's no final exam, but this course is cumulative in the sense that everything builds on the last element. Okay? So in other words, if you can do quiz 3, you can definitely do quiz 2, because quiz 3 builds on stuff that quiz 2 was predicated upon. Quiz 4 builds on quiz 3. Quiz 5 builds on quiz 4. Quiz 6 builds on quiz 5, and so on. All right? It's cumulative in that respect, that we keep going in one direction. Okay? Enhancing our skill set more and more and more and more. Okay. Next, students with disabilities. If you have a physical, psychological, and/or learning disability which might affect your performance of this class, first of all, contact Disability Services, and if you have the paperwork, send it in to me as well. Okay. In this class, there's not a designated time duration where we have assignments due like in a time window. So it's not like, oh, you have 60 minutes to do this quiz. Begin your quest. There's nothing like that in here. Okay, but if you need to turn that paperwork in, please do so. I want to accommodate you in any way that I can. Makeup assignments. Again, there's only 2 deadlines for this class. So I don't think makeup assignments are going to be necessary because there's just 2 deadlines. Now, if something happens, you're trying to turn your stuff in on October 7th, and you get into a car crash, please let me know. Okay, obviously I'm not going to be like, you had that car crash. I'm sorry, it was due October 7th. So there's going to be a little bit more flexibility on this one, a little less flexibility on this one. Okay, when it comes to the end of the semester, that second wave is due December 2nd. But that's the due date. Listen, you've got, in other words, almost 2 months to turn in the first wave of stuff. That's 5 assignments. That's it. 5 assignments. Okay, and they're not outrageously long. I'm not asking you to write 1 billion words or something like that. You have 5 quizzes due in about what, 8 weeks, 7 weeks, and then the next wave is due after that. And like I said, the preparation for that first wave is ready to go. And I'm going to explain what that looks like here in a moment. Okay, then we come to page 4 of the syllabus where I get into COVID contingencies. So since these are quite new, I want to go over here. Now, this is an online class, so some of this stuff is mitigated already by the fact that it's online, but there are things that could happen, so I just want to make sure it's clear. So, COVID could cause additional challenges for this class, okay, and could make changes to the schedule, okay. As this is an online course, quarantined students are expected to continue with the course as planned. However, if you become too ill to complete your work, at her discretion, that's me, the professor may arrange for necessary accommodations, which may, depending on the circumstances and documentation, include modifications to due dates, alternative assignments, an incomplete, a medical withdrawal. Should the professor become ill, our engagement in the course may be reduced or delayed, and/or another professor may take over the course, potentially resulting in syllabus modifications. Okay, so I could end up changing things as they're needed, okay, if it becomes necessary. I don't think that's going to be the case here. Okay, next. Each student must have regular access to a computer with video camera and microphone. That's for if we need to Zoom for office hours. These may be required daily, not for this class, or only on occasion, depending on the mode of instruction or the health status of the student or faculty. All students must be able to access and use Blackboard. I'm going to get into that in a little bit. Blackboard is going to be very important for this course. So is YouTube. Okay, each student must have internet access to receive notifications about their class and complete assignments if required by the instructor. That will be required. Students must check their university email and Blackboard announcements each day. Probably not going to be doing daily announcements, but I will have announcements that I want you to be prepared for. Okay, mode of instruction. I just need to put this in here as a qualifier. The university reserves the right to change, adjust, and or cancel any campus operation, including but not limited to mode of instruction, delivery, or services, or use of campus facilities whenever the campus administration determines in its sole discretion that circumstances warrant the operational change. Being that this is an online class, that is probably not going to affect us here. Office hours, as I've already said, I'm going to set aside some time on Tuesday mornings, namely at 10 a.m., or if you want to meet with me. That's the standby time. So I'm not going to sit there in front of Zoom just waiting. But if you want to meet with me at that time, let me know, hey, I'd like to see you at office hours at 10 o'clock or 10:30. That's the time that I've set aside that I'm going to be ready. All right, and so let me know, and I'll send you the Zoom link, and we'll meet up. Okay? If that time does not work for you, we can also meet by appointment as well. Okay? I'm pretty free otherwise. I do have some commitments at other times, but I want to be able to do what's easiest for you as well. The easiest way to get in contact with me is definitely through my email, thomasb@usca.edu. Okay, and then finally, since I've already gone over the list of the symbols, finally, when it comes to the syllabus, here's the wave of topics. Okay, so you might think, oh, looks like there's more going on in the first wave than the second wave. It's really just the same amount of stuff. Wave 2 is just more condensed. We're doing less stuff, but the stuff is a little bit more sophisticated. Okay, at that point. So, first 5 quizzes, there they are, what they're on. Yes, quiz 3 is on there twice, because there are 2 things on quiz 3. Quiz 3 is maybe a little hefty. So basically, prolegomena, that's introductory stuff. Okay, conditionals, those are those if-then statements. Conjunctions, those and statements. Conditional proofs, some more stuff with conditional statements. Negations, not indirect proofs, we'll talk about those when we get there. And biconditionals. Okay, those are if and only if statements. Okay, which you'll see when you get to quiz 5 stuff. So that's it on the syllabus. Now let me get into how the assignments are going to work, and I'm going to specifically dictate these in announcements on Blackboard. All right, so let's talk about Blackboard now. So when you log into Blackboard right now, here I'm in a student preview, but right now it'll look pretty barren because I'm recording this video before anything's really up in the class in terms of announcements. So once the announcements are here, things will look pretty lively. But the thing I want to talk about here is where most of the course's content is. Fortunately, most of the course's content is in a little tab over here called Course Content. So if you click on that, I want to explain what is here. So first of all, the first thing is the syllabus. That's the syllabus that we already reviewed. That's it here. That's where you can find that as a PDF. There's also these sways on logic. So these are these little, they're kind of like PowerPoint presentations. They're for the first quiz. So pretty much all the questions for the first quiz are going to come from here. Like here, and they open up pretty easily. So here's one, for example, a set of slides for the first quiz. And I'm not expecting you to commit that to memory. There will be an explicit announcement that dictates what the parameters for quiz 1 are. Here's the stuff you should do to prepare for quiz 1. Here's the stuff that you should do to prepare for quiz 2 and quiz 3, and so on. That's not up yet. Okay? But if I go back to course content, there's those sways. There's also here, you'll notice there's this tab called Pospisil chapters. If I click on that, there are actually, out of your textbook, these are PDFs. They're pretty rough PDFs of chapters 2 and 3 from the book. So if you are waiting for your book to come in, let's say you ordered it from someplace online and it's shipping out of, I don't know, central Mongolia, and it's going to be a while for it to get here. Especially with a lot of postal deliveries being delayed right now, and you know it's going to take a while, the first couple chapters of the book are here. Chapter 1 is not, because I don't really use chapter 1 of the book. It's a little almost too introductory. Back to course content. What else is here? Rule guides. So pretty much all the things you could learn for moves in the semester, things you can do with formal logic, are all here. Now, some of this stuff is going to be advanced. Actually, everything all semester long that you could possibly use, that's something that to do in formal logic, is here. So these ones towards the bottom, this is stuff from quiz 10. You can look at it now. It's there. It's not going to change any. It's already there, so you can maybe see what quick stuff like on quiz 10 is going to look like. Really, the stuff from the first quizzes is here. So, for example, if I open this up, hey, it's got a bunch of stuff that's not going to come in handy until later on certain quizzes. But hey, even that first thing there, that's something that we already talked about. Okay, that's going to come up again when I look at quizzes too. But so all the rule guides for all the different moves that we can do all semester long, this is almost more of a kind of like a wiki of sorts, where pretty much everything that you need to know about how to do something in formal logic, it's all here. Okay? So that's the rule guides. Chapter augments. So here, this is to augment stuff that's in the book. So sometimes I've either rewritten a chapter that's in the book because I don't like the way that it appears in the book. So, for example, here's my take on chapter 5. Here's my take on chapter 4. Whereas the book sometimes uses different notation and does things that I wouldn't do. And sometimes here are the problems out of the book. Okay, here's like the answer guides to stuff out of the book. So that's available to you here. Okay, and that way you can work on some of the problems in the book. In fact, I spent a lot of time in the lectures of the course going over problems that are from the book, so you can practice that. You look at the lectures, do them on your own, and then you can look back at these answer guides, or you can look at the lectures again and check them against your own work. Which brings me now to, I just mentioned the lectures. The last thing on here are the lectures. So you'll notice they're broken up into two waves. Wave 1 and Wave 2. I'll go ahead and say now, Wave 2 is not ready yet. It's still under construction. However, all the lectures for Wave 1 are already completed. They're already ready to go. They're already all here. Okay? So, what you can do, these are all on YouTube. So here's what I recommend doing. So for example, you can watch them in here in like a little bubble. Like this one will pop up a little tiny YouTube box. I would actually recommend watching them on YouTube, and I'm going to explain why here in a moment, because some of these are long. So look, like this first one here is a little over an hour. This one's like half an hour. This one's like an hour and 20 minutes, almost 2 hours. Here I outdid myself, okay? 2 hours and 23 minutes. Am I expecting you to sit down and watch me talk here on YouTube for 2 hours and 23 minutes straight? Absolutely not. So what I recommend is actually if you click on it and go to YouTube. So if I go to watch video here, and it'll tell me, hey, do you want to, let's see, if I blow it, let me blow it up here. So if I start playing it here, there we go. Let me blow it up. And I say here, oh, it's got more videos. That's nice. I get the link. If I go to open this link in, say, a new tab, it's going to pop open YouTube here directly. And there's something that I want you to see that I've put under the comments for each video. All right, so now I've gone to the actual video here on YouTube. Okay, so here it is. This, again, 2 hour and almost 23 minute long video. Okay. For each of these videos, I've done this. So if you go down to the comments, and I know YouTube comments are not always the warmest place to go. They don't bring out the best in people. But what I've done is I've basically made an interactive table of contents for every single video. Okay, so if you go down here and you're like, okay, where does he talk about this concept? Okay, where does he talk about only if? Bam, it takes you right there. Okay, or I want to go take a look at number 14 again. Where does he talk about that? There you go, there's problem 14. There it is. So that's the case for all these videos. Okay, all of them have an analytic table of contents like this where you can go to the exact moment. And I encourage you, again, there's hours of content here for the first wave. If I were to add it up, oh gosh, there's like 9 videos, probably like, I don't know, 15, 16 hours. But if you were to spread that out over the first half of the semester, that's been about the normal amount of lectures. Okay? Plus you can put them on repeat. Like, so if something wasn't clear, you can go back and watch it again. You can't really do that in real life, so to speak. Okay, in the classroom. So I think this will be helpful to you. So the first wave is good to go. Okay, the second wave of videos will be coming up later. And so now back to Blackboard. If I go to, we were at course content over here, and we were looking at the YouTube lectures. And like I said, I'll tell you which videos to watch when. For example, for quiz 1, you really only need to look at the first video that's up there. So that first video, not this one, but lecture number 1, because I'm counting this one as lecture number 0. That way it doesn't, the first lecture? No, lecture 0 is, well, that's what you're listening to right now. So if you go to assignments, that's actually where the quizzes are. All right, so when you click on quizzes, and that's the only assignments that are ever going to pop up here. There's nothing else is going to be added here later on. But if we go to assignments, there's quizzes. Wave 1, these are the ones due October 7th. These are the ones due December 2nd. You'll notice Wave 2, nothing's here right now. Okay, that's still under construction. Okay. And plus, I want you to focus on this stuff anyway. So here it is. There are your quizzes. The first 5. Now the first one here is different. So this one is an application. So what I mean by that is here, look, this it's an application, meaning once I click begin, it's going to start asking me questions. Okay, I think there are 10 questions for this quiz 1, and they're all stuff that are going to come from those sways on logic that I said a while ago. Like I said, I'm going to put up the explicit and official quiz 1 assignment here shortly. Okay, what the actual assignments are. And then quiz 2, this is more typical of what the quizzes are going to be like. So quiz 2, quiz 3, quiz 4, quiz 5, there they are. For example, if I click on quiz 2, and I can actually get this stuff from here, but look, quiz 2, if I click on this, there's quiz 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to print this out, download it here, print it out, fill it out. Now, how would I fill out stuff like this? You'll know how to do these problems once you look at lectures 2 and 3. But here it is. Here's the entirety. You print this out, and then after you print it out, fill it out, do it, and then what you're going to do is you're going to scan it back somehow, whether that be through a scanner or through, I think the easiest way is to get, like, take pictures of it on your phone through a scanning app like Adobe Scan or something like that, and then collate it and turn it back in here. What you're going to do when you turn it in is you're going to, you might have to email it back to yourself, but browse my computer and attach it here. Okay, attach it and turn it in as a PDF here. Don't turn it in as a bunch of image files. Don't turn it in as a bunch of JPEGs or GIFs. That's right, I said it. Turn it in here as a PDF file. All right, I collated that as one PDF file. So don't do like a PDF for page 1, a PDF for page 2. If you got all those, collate the PDF. And like I said, I'm going to make, before any of these are due, like in the next week, I'm going to make an instructional video on how to do that, how to basically scan it back in, collate it, and turn it in as a PDF. So there will be an explicit tutorial on that. Okay? But also, there's another file here too that basically says, oh, here's all the stuff that you need to know, really, for quiz 2. There's that move. In fact, this is a move I was talking about a little while ago in the introduction when I was talking about formal logic and what it looks like. So all that stuff is there. Okay? And there's sometimes additional content for the other quizzes. But pretty much all the supplemental stuff for the quizzes is right here, and you can actually click on it from here. Like you can see quiz 4 has a bunch of stuff that's meant there to help you as well. Okay, so that's stuff you'd want to look at while you're working on that quiz. I do recommend, obviously, since they kind of build on each other, do them in order. So like I said, quiz 1's kind of its own thing. It's kind of an introductory quiz, and it's atypical. Like it's multiple choice, fill in the blank questions. These are very different. Okay? So, that I think concludes what I have for you here today about everything that you need to know really on Blackboard at this point. So if you still have lingering questions, reach out to me at thomasb@usca.edu, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Also, it wasn't here when I was making this recording, but you'll have particular assignments that are going to come up that will say, like, for quiz 1, do this stuff. For quiz 2, do this stuff. For quiz 3, do this stuff, and so on. Okay? And you'll see those, you'll probably see a barrage of emails articulating wave 1 here in the next, for you, the next 24 hours or so as of this class beginning, because right now it is August 20th, 2020. All right, let's begin. And let's have a good fall 2020, at least the best that we can. I look forward to working with you all.